Hey, so if you're watching this video, chances are you want to learn more about AI and AI engineering, which I think is a great idea because AI literacy is one of the top skills of the 21st century and is becoming more important every day with new AI tools and developments in large language models, paving the way for an even more automated world. It's not just me saying this, by the way. The World Economic Forum did a survey in 2023 where they found that one of the top in-demand skills for employees is AI literacy. And if you're not interested in going on that path, there are also countless opportunities these days to build your own AI applications, where a basic understanding of AI can also be really helpful. So what I wanted to do in this video is walk you through my process of picking up new skills, which I've had to do on numerous occasions during my 10-year career as a machine learning engineer. The first thing I think you need is programming skills, and in particular Python programming skills. And why do I think this? Well, because this is still the most efficient way to interface with our machines. And as a machine learning engineer or an AI engineer, we're spending a lot of time trying to teach machines what to do, and we need to be able to speak its language. Python is the language of choice in AI and data science. So this is the one that I recommend you learn. And since we're living in the future, my recommendation will be to download an AI-assisted integrated development environment like Cursor, which basically gives you access to a live-in AI coding tutor. So let me show you what I mean with a live-in AI coding instructor. So we're opening up our IDE, in this case Cursor, and we're going to ask the large language model to generate the basic structure of a Python application for us. All right, so it's looked in the workspace. We're starting with an empty directory. And as you can see, it's starting with some requirements, which are Python libraries that you need to import to run your code. This is a lot of Python applications depend on open source libraries for a lot of the functionality that we're using. Right, so it's generating a main class that we can run with a project structure. And as you can see, we have our basic structure for a Python application that we can run. We can now develop functionality. And we have a way to test ideas or coding concepts that we come up with in our courses. We can even ask it things, and it will give us more explanations on best practices in software architecture and design. Right, so this is a great way to get instant feedback on your decisions, to see if you're following best practices, which is something very useful when you're starting off as a beginner. But at some point, you'll run into the limitations of what the large language model can do for you. And you do need to have your own knowledge of languages and frameworks to help the LLM. So for this, the first place I would look is in the documentation pages of the different languages and frameworks that you're using. Especially for open source tools, they're usually well maintained, because there's a huge community behind them. And a great place to get started as a beginner is to actually find gaps in the documentation and update the documentation for those open source frameworks. Let's quickly go over some documentation pages for popular AI tooling and frameworks. So this is the documentation page for Python. As you can see, there are instructions on how to install the Python interpreter on your machine, as well as an introduction to the Python programming language that I highly recommend you read if you're completely new to programming in Python. Once you sort of know your way around Python, you can think about installing Python libraries like pandas, scikit-learn, transformers, or langchain, and they all have the same documentation structure. So you have a getting started, you have a user guide with the API reference. The application programming interface is the reference of all the commands supported by the libraries that you're using, as well as usually good examples of how to use the frameworks that you want to use. Pandas, for example, this is the API reference I was talking about. It just provides a full overview of everything implemented in this open source library. Same for scikit-learn. You have a user guide, API, and examples. So let's see for examples. Scikit-learn is a general purpose machine learning library. So it has a lot of basic machine learning algorithms and models implemented, as well as helpful tools and utilities for AI. Transformers is another great open source library. Again, these are all community maintained, 100% free to use, both commercially and educationally. So this is another great thing about the Python ecosystem. And in the case of transformers, there are actually a ton of pre-trained transformer models available to download, as well as datasets on which to fine-tune your model once you get into the weeds of training and fine-tuning your own large language models. And lastly, LangChain, which is a Python library that's been gaining popularity with the rise of AI agents. Now that large language models have become more capable, you can use LangChain to orchestrate how large language models use tools and interact with environments to make them perform more complicated tasks and processes. But of course, familiarity with programming languages and frameworks alone isn't enough to make you a proper AI engineer. So I do recommend you follow at least a couple of the courses that are outlined in the blog post to get more familiar with high-level computer science concepts and algorithms so that you understand what you're working with. Right, so once you know your way around Python, or maybe if you already do, then it's time to really start to level up your AI skills and get into the weeds when it comes to AI concepts. And right now in AI, I think there are 4 key disciplines that you need to have a strong understanding of. Those are linear algebra, probability theory, machine learning models, and deep learning. If you have those 4 covered, I think you're already a long way there. And there are some great free online courses that can get you 50% of the way there. The other 50% is actual hands-on experience, which we'll cover in the next section. Let's first have a look at some of those free courses that are available. The first thing I recommend you start with is upgrading your knowledge and understanding of basic statistics and probability theory. This course that I'm showing you here is one of the few courses I haven't taken myself because statistics and probability theory was part of my graduate program. But I highly recommend that you gain at least basic understanding, including concepts like conditional probability, different distributions, as well as limit theorems, which are going to prove highly useful in all the subsequent work that you do in AI. After mastering basic statistics and probability theory, the next thing I would recommend is refreshing your linear algebra knowledge. Even if you've taken this in college, it might be good to refresh it. I do this every now and then. I just go back to manually solving linear equations just to get back to the basics, basically. And the Imperial College London specialization in mathematics for machine learning is one of the courses on this list that I did take, and I highly recommend it, specifically the linear algebra section, because it focuses on the parts of linear algebra that are most important for machine learning. Next thing I would do is also take a more practical course. One example that I've given here is the machine learning engineering path offered by Google, another free course where you see how these theoretical concepts are applied in practice when building and evaluating machine learning models. The last thing I would definitely also do is do a deep dive in deep learning. This is the course that I took. There are plenty of other good courses out there. This is the one that that really kicked off my deep learning journey back in 2017. But I know the field has progressed quite a bit since then, so there might be better courses out there. As with all Coursera courses, they're free to audit. So if you don't have any money or you don't want to spend anything, you can just audit it for a couple of weeks and do all the exercises and then move on to the next thing. So if you followed steps 1 and 2, you now have a good understanding of the Python AI ecosystem, as well as a good grasp of the most important concepts in AI and machine learning. But before starting on your own wonderful AI project, I would recommend first joining a number of the AI communities out there. Some great communities to look at include Eleuther AI, which is a very active open source AI research community with a Discord where people are discussing everything from the latest papers to how they're training their own AI models. Another place that is quite similar is the Hugging Face forums, where people are also discussing things that they run into, training models, fine-tuning models, and scaling up processing jobs. Besides these online forums, I would also recommend attending machine learning conferences, because this is a great place to mingle with AI researchers. Some of the top ones include ICLR and ICML, both of which have online virtual passes available that are not as expensive as attending those conferences in person. These research conferences are also a great place to get up to speed with the latest trends in AI research. Some of these will be the things that you'll be working with in industry next year or the year after. And the best part of it, for example, a conference like ICLR, all the conference papers are published online for free. This is also a great opportunity to update your theoretical knowledge. And lastly, I would also definitely recommend playing with all of the AI tools out there, as this is also a great way to see what people are building. For example, there are the obvious candidates like ChatGPT, Claude, or Perplexity, but also more niche tools that might be specific to a domain that you're interested in. So just start a free trial, see how it works, figure out what they're building, look at what's out there, before you start on your own project. So now that you have a basic understanding of AI programming and you know what the community is up to, so now that you have all that under your belt, it's time to pick your own project to work on, because nothing beats experience when it comes to AI. It's an evolving field, and although you definitely need theory, in the end, a lot of it is empirical. From the benchmarks, like the one that we just saw, up until the research that's being done where people are just training models, unexpected things happen. Even today, AI researchers have no idea how exactly LLMs are able to do what they do. So a lot of it is down to experimenting, figuring out what works. And the only way to do that is by getting your hands dirty. I would recommend that when you start to work on your project, try to pick one that is both doable and that creates value, whether it is for you personally, for your community, or for a set of customers that you have in mind. When I screen candidates for projects, I typically look not just at their technical skills, but how they're able to translate those technical skills into actual value created for the businesses that I work with. Just something to keep in mind. And to build AI applications, you need an environment. And while there are good free environments to work in, like Google Colab, which I'm showing you here, which is a notebook-based environment, so you can run Python, you can even train models, but there are severe limitations to this type of environments. The main one being that your code gets quite messy when you have too many lines or when you start to build more complex applications, including, for example, deep learning models, which often require several modules of Python code working together during training or inference time. So what I would recommend instead is you use an integrated development environment, because that also gives you access to a terminal. So the one I'm showing you here, which is Cursor, this is the same project that we generated at the beginning of the video, and as you can see here, I'm opening up a Cursor, and that allows me to run the Python application from the command line, to install Python libraries, to do the things that you need to do to interface between your application code and the hardware layer underneath. Of course, I've glossed over quite a few things, right? So if you reach this part of the video, you have a basic understanding to get started, but you'll run into tons and tons of issues where it comes to deploying AI applications, hitting scaling limits or compute budgets. There are tons of things that will trip you up. So you do really need this solid theoretical and practical foundation to work with AI applications. But once you have that, it can become an invaluable skill, part of your professional day-to-day life. Something akin to Excel skills, like working with spreadsheets, is in the current business environment. I think AI literacy is going to be very much commonplace for the workforce of the future. And that also brings me to my last point, which is that AI is a continuously evolving field. I think it's only going to grow in importance. And in order to keep up with the latest advancements in AI, my strategy is to subscribe to a number of newsletters. That way I don't have to rely on information from colleagues or from X exclusively, and I can just do a quick roundup every week. Usually I do this on a Friday morning, where I go over the latest AI news with the AI newsletters to which I'm subscribed. There are, of course, other ways. Talking to other people working in AI is, of course, also a great way, but they won't know everything either. So this is what I found works best for me at the moment. Another way, if you want daily updates, is to follow people in the AI research community, because they're usually working on interesting things, and they'll publish what they're working on social media channels, including X, Blue Sky, or LinkedIn. And that's all I had. So good luck. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'll try to do my best to reply to them as soon as I can. And see you next time.